Dr. Sydney Socloff. drsydney22@gmail.com. 2022. Narration by Dr. Sydney Socloff,
Zoe Phonemes,
and Nathan Koltov. For a more complete discussion of YouTube navigation, please go to this video using the link here.
Chapter 1. Introduction to Quebec City.
Quebec, or in French, Ville de Québec.
This is the coat of arms of Quebec. Quebec or Quebec, also Quebec City or Quebec City, in French, Quebec, or Ville de Québec, is the capital of the Canadian province of Quebec and is located within the Capitale Nationale region.
The impression made upon the visitor by this Gibraltar of America, its giddy heights, its citadel suspended, as it were, in the air, its picturesque steep streets. It is a place not to be forgotten or mixed up in the mind with other places, or altered for a moment in the crowd of scenes a traveler can recall. Charles Dickens, 1842. Here is the province of Quebec, bounded by Ontario on the west, Newfoundland on the east, and New Brunswick and the U.S. on the south.
This again is the province of Quebec, bounded by Ontario on the west, Newfoundland on the east, and New Brunswick and the U.S. on the south.
Here is Quebec City on the St. Lawrence River. There are a large number of small towns in the area around Quebec City, especially along the St. Lawrence River.
This is Quebec City and the St. Lawrence River. Here is the population of the provinces of Canada, going from east to west.
The total population of Canada is 38 million.
Ontario is the most populous province, with a population of 14.8 million.
Quebec is the second province in population, with 8.6 million people.
In third place is British Columbia with 4.4 million. Toronto in Ontario is the largest city in Canada, with a metropolitan area population of 6.2 million. Montreal in Quebec is in second place, with a metropolitan area population of 4.3 million.
Vancouver, British Columbia, on the west coast, is the third largest city with a metropolitan area population of 2.6 million. Quebec City is the seventh largest city in Canada and the second largest in the province of Quebec after Montreal, and has a metropolitan area population of 839,000.
Quebec City is the second most populous city in the province of Quebec after Montreal, which is about 233 kilometers, 145 mi, to the southwest. The demonym for Quebec City is Québécois in French and Québécois in English.
The narrowing of the St. Lawrence River near Quebec City and Lévis, on the opposite bank, provided the name given to the city. Quebec, an Algonquin word meaning where the river narrows.
This is the Quebec City coat of arms. A nickname for Quebec City is La Ville Capitale, or the Old Capital. The city motto is Donde Dieu fera valoir, which means, I shall put God's gift to good use. The Donde Dieu was the name of Champlain's ship. The ramparts surrounding Old Quebec, Quebec, are the only remaining fortified city walls in the Americas north of Mexico. These city walls were declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1985 as the Historic District of Old Quebec.
Quebec City is internationally known for its summer festival, Winter Carnival, and the Chateau Frontenac, a hotel that dominates the city skyline. The Chateau Frontenac Grand Hotel is one of the most popular attractions in Quebec City. The Chateau Frontenac was one of a series of chateau-style hotels built for the Canadian Pacific Railway Company at the end of the 19th and the start of the 20th century.
The Chateau Frontenac opened in 1893, 5 years after its sister hotel, the Banff Springs Hotel. The railway company sought to encourage luxury tourism and bring wealthy travelers to its trains.
The Chateau Frontenac was named in honor of Louis de Buade, Count of Frontenac, who was governor of the colony of New France from 1672 to 1682, and from 1689 to 1698. The hotel is built near the Plains of Abraham. It is on a tall cape overlooking the St. Lawrence River, giving a spectacular view for several kilometers. The building is the most prominent feature of the Quebec City skyline, as seen from across the St. Lawrence River, and is a symbol of the city.
Chapter 2: Quebec City Sightseeing. Quebec City Orientation. Old Quebec, Vieux Quebec.
Chapter 3: Hauteville, or Upper Town.
This is Hauteville, or Upper Town. This is a map of Quebec City showing the Hauteville, or Upper Town of Old Quebec. This shows the Hauteville or Upper Town of Old Quebec.
This again shows the Hauteville or Upper Town of Old Quebec. Vieux Quebec, Old Quebec, is the historic part of Quebec City, founded in 1608. The upper part, referred to as Upper Town, Hauteville, is walled with ramparts and makes Quebec the only remaining walled city north of Mexico and North America.
This is the Port Saint-Jean in the Hauteville.
This shows again the Hauteville and the location of the citadel. The citadel is a military installation and official residence located atop Cap d'Amen, adjoining the Plains of Abraham. This citadel is part of the fortifications of Quebec City. The name citadel is used both in English and French. The citadel is located atop Cap d'Amen, adjoining the Plains of Abraham in Quebec City.
The Chateau Frontenac was built near the historic citadel, whose construction the Count of Frontenac had begun at the end of the 17th century.
During World War II, 2 conferences were held in Quebec City. The first Quebec Conference was held in 1943 with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the United States President at the time, and Winston Churchill, the United Kingdom's Prime Minister.
Also attending were William Liu Mackenzie King, Canada's Prime Minister, and TV Sun, China's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Much of the staff stayed nearby in the Chateau Frontenac.
The Second Quebec Conference was held in 1944 and was attended by Churchill and Roosevelt. This was in the Citadel's buildings and nearby Chateau Frontenac. A large part of the plans for the D-Day landings was made during those meetings.
The first protective wall was built in the 17th century by the French under Louis de Bade. Souillou de Frontenac.
The British built the star-shaped fortifications of the citadel between 1820 and 1831. They incorporated a section of the French fortifications of 1745. The purpose of the fortifications was to secure the strategic heights of Cape d'Amen against the Americans. It was also to serve as a refuge for the British garrison in the event of attack or rebellion. The citadel has been the home station of the Royal 22nd Regiment of the Canadian Forces since 1920.
In addition to its use as a military installation, the Citadel has also been an official residence of the Governor-General of Canada since 1872, who by tradition resides there for several weeks out of the year. The Governor-General's primary residence is Rideau Hall in Ottawa.
The Plains of Abraham, also called Battlefields Park, is where the British and French fought during the French and Indian War in 1759. The Discovery Pavilion has a multimedia show and more than 30 regimental uniforms on display.
This is a painting of the Battle of the Plains of Abraham.
The Musée du Fort presents a sound and light show about the military history of Quebec City, including the famous Battle of the Plains of Abraham.
The Musée du Fort is very close to the Château Frontenac. The highlights of the military past of Quebec are brought to life with the remarkable 400-square-foot model of the city and its surroundings around 1750. State-of-the-art sound and light technology help to explain the story.
The 40-year history of the Musée du Fort and its 200-year-old building is explained. The exhibit Destiny of New France relates the history of Quebec from the time of the first explorers to the British conquest.
The Quebec Parliament Building, Hotel du Parlement, is the meeting place of Quebec's National Assembly. This building is an impressive architectural landmark.
The National Assembly of Quebec, Provincial Parliament, the Musée National des Beaux-Arts du Québec, National Museum of Fine Arts, and the Musée de la Civilisation, Museum of Civilization, are within or near Viau-Québec. The Parliament Building, in French, Hôtel du Parlement, is an 8-floor building and home to the Parliament of Quebec, composed of the Lieutenant Governor and the National Assembly, in Quebec City.
Bishop Laval established the Jesuit Seminary or Séminaire du Québec in 1663 to provide training for the priesthood. This seminary quickly became the leading learning institution in New France and the nucleus from which the Université Laval was formed.
This is François de Laval, the first bishop of New France, 1659 to 1684. The Séminaire du Québec and the Ursulines Monastery are both located a short distance from the Château Frontenac.
The Université Laval now has its campus in the southwestern suburb of Sainte-Foy. However, several university faculties, for example, architecture, still occupy some of the seminary's historic old buildings.
The École des Ursulines, known in English as the School of the Ursulines, is among North America's oldest schools. It was founded in 1639 by French nun Marie de l'Incarnation and laywoman Marie-Madeleine de Chauvigny de la Peltrie. This was also the beginning of the Ursuline order in New France. The convent has many original walls and houses, a little chapel, and a museum. It is in the middle of the historical district of Quebec City, which UNESCO recognizes as a World Heritage District. The school has 2 campuses in the Quebec City campus. More than 400 girls are enrolled from preschool through primary school.
The École des Ursulines remains in operation as a private girls' school.
This is the French nun Marie de l'Incarnation, who co-founded the École des Ursulines in 1639.
This is Saint Angela Mérici, founder of the Ursuline.
The Musée National des Beaux-Arts du Québec, French for National Museum of Fine Arts of Quebec, has 25,000 works essentially produced in Quebec or by Quebec artists, some dating from the 18th century.
Musée National des Beaux-Arts du Québec is on the Plains of Abraham in the Battlefields Park.
The Dufferin Terrace overlooks the St. Lawrence River right by the Chateau Frontenac. This terrace was built in 1838 next to the St. Louis Fort, which Champlain erected at the top of the cliff.
This shows the location of the Dufferin Terrace. The terrace is named for Lord Dufferin, the Governor of Canada from 1872 to 1878. Lord Dufferin fought against the demolition of the fortifications that are around the city.
The Dufferin Terrace is the most visited tourist attraction in Quebec City. From here is an excellent view of the South Shore, the Ile d'Orléans, the Old Port and the Chateau Frontenac, the most photographed hotel in the world.
The Dufferin Terrace is alive with street artists, musicians, mimes, one-man bands, and many others all summer. There are also cannons used to defend the city more than once throughout the centuries. Also on the terrace are the Samuel de Champlain Monument and the one dedicated to Generals Wolfe and Montcalm, who both died during the famous Battle of the Plains of Abraham. This is the Samuel de Champlain statue. The Museum of French America, Musée de l'Amérique Française, is a history museum documenting the settlement of Quebec by the French. The Musée de l'Amérique Française is the oldest museum in Canada.
Uptown's most central location is the Place d'Armes, located very close to Chateau Frontenac and bordered by government buildings.
The majestic Ancien Palais de Justice, Old Courthouse, is on the west side of the Place d'Armes. It is a Renaissance-style building from 1887.
Place d'Armes has been used for parades and military events for centuries. The Place d'Armes is on land occupied by a church and convent of the Récollet missionaries, Franciscan monks, who in 1615 were the first order of priests to arrive in New France. The Gothic-style fountain at the Cinta of Place d'Armes pays tribute to their arrival.
Chapter 4, Basseville or Lower Town.
This shows the location of the Basseville or Louis Town.
Lower Town or Basseville is the city's original settlement on the banks of the St. Lawrence River.
This is Louis Town or Basseville.
This is a view of Lower Town or Basseville. The lower part of the old city, referred to as Lower Town or Basseville, contains the historic church Notre Dame des Victoires, 1687, and plentiful shopping in ancient buildings.
A few buildings are 17th century vintage, and many buildings date from the mid-18th century. The prevailing architectural styles are British and French, representing village architecture from Western France, Brittany, Aquitaine, etc. during the same period. Not many cities in Canada have architecture as diverse as Quebec City. No fewer than 11 architectural styles from the 17th century to modern times have been identified in Quebec City.
The stone buildings are enlivened by brightly colored metal roofs and signs. Not uncommon in cities that need coping with long, all-white winters. The Musée de la Civilisation has an international scope of its numerous exhibitions, an unusual take on unorthodox themes.
The Musée de la Civilisation is in the Old Port or Lower Town area. Chapter 4 Place Royale. Place Royale is a centerpiece of the Old Town in 1608. Samuel de Champlain began constructing a fortified post for the fur trade with the native peoples. Place Royale, then called the Market Square, was above all the center of trade in New France. From 1633, when hundreds of Amerindians came to a major fur fair, until 1759, the square was a hub of activity. All European imports were brought ashore, and all exports were loaded on ships at Quebec City.
Place Royale is in the Old Port or Lower Town area. Place Royale is the heart of historic Lower Town and has been an important social center since the city's founding.
Quartier du Petit Champlain dates back to the mid-17th century. The Quartier du Petit Champlain neighborhood is the oldest commercial district in North America.
This is a view of Quartier du Petit Champlain. Old Port of Quebec National Historic Site, Lieu Historique National du Vieux-Port de Québec, is a maritime museum that explores the shipbuilding and lumber industries that initially helped Quebec City prosper.
This funicular goes between Lower Town and Upper Town. The funicular from Lower Town to Upper Town is close to the Chateau Frontenac.
This is a view of the funicular from Lower Town to Upper Town.
This is another view of the funicular from Lower Town to Upper Town.
The escalier cascade or breakneck steps leads the way from Lower Town to Upper Town. This was an ambitious 1893 design. The steepness of the city's first iron stairway is ample evidence of how it got its name, breakneck steps.
The 170 steps were built on the site of the original 17th century stairway that linked the Upper Town and Lower Town. There are shops and restaurants of various levels. L'escalier cascade was very close to the funicular from Upper Town. The Naval Museum of Quebec traces the history of the Canadian sailor from the beginning of the 20th century. The Naval Museum of Quebec has exhibits on the St. Lawrence River and the Naval Reserve of Canada. Here, you will learn about naval battles on the St. Lawrence River that shaped Canadian history, the strategic importance of this river and the roles it played in many historical events. The Hotel Dieu Augustin Museum is a history museum showcasing the deeds and lifestyle of early Quebec's religious missionaries.
This is a view of a street in Quebec City. Chapter 6. Outside the Old City. The Observatoire de la Capitale is an observation deck located on the 31st floor of the Idefes Marie Guerre. This is a view from the Observatoire de la Capitale.
This is the central train station of Quebec City, the Gare du Palais.
This shows the location of the Gare du Palais.
This is St. Roch Square in downtown Quebec City.
This is the City Hall of Quebec City and the Price Building. The Université Laval is the oldest center of education in Canada and was the first institution in North America to offer higher education in French. Its main campus is on the outskirts of Quebec City.
Université Laval is ranked among the top 10 Canadian universities in research funding. It is classified as a medical doctoral university for its medical school and large number of graduate students. These origins of the university are the Séminaire de Québec, founded in 1663 by Monseigneur François de Laval, the first bishop of New France. Laval University was established by the Séminaire de Québec in 1852.
Queen Victoria granted a royal charter to the Séminaire de Québec in 1852. Giving Université Laval the rights and privileges of a university.
Chapter 7. The Environs of Quebec City.
This is a view of Quebec City from the St. Lawrence River.
The Île d'Orléans is 25 minutes from the Lévis-du-Port and is a rustic and beautiful island. Beautiful farmlands, churches, fishing ponds and quaint shops offer a respite from the large cities. Île d'Orléans could be a part of Normandy or Brittany, but it's definitely French. Among the other attractions near Quebec City are Montmorency Falls and the Basilica of Saint-Anne-de-Beaupré in the town of Saint-Anne-de-Beaupré. This shows the location of Montmorency Falls.
Montmorency Falls is a large waterfall near Quebec City. The falls, at 84 meters, 275 feet, high, is the highest in the province of Quebec and 30 meters, 98 feet, higher than Niagara Falls. The basin at the foot of the falls is 17 meters, 56 feet, deep.
The falls are at the mouth of the Montmorency River, where it drops over the cliff shore into the St. Lawrence River, opposite the western end of the Île d'Orléans. The falls were given this name in 1613 by Samuel de Champlain in honor of Henri II, Duc de Montmorency, who served as Viceroy of New France from 1620 until 1625.
Chapter 8. The Basilica of Saint-Anne-de-Beaupré is a basilica along the St. Lawrence River in Quebec, 19 miles, 30 kilometers east of Quebec City. The Basilica of Saint-Anne-de-Beaupré is an important Catholic sanctuary that receives about 500,000 pilgrims yearly. The peak period of pilgrimage is around July 26th. The Feast of Saint Anne, the patron saint of Quebec.
The Roman Catholic Church has credited the Basilica of Saint-Anne-de-Beaupré with many miracles in curing the sick and disabled.
Chapter 9. The History of Quebec City.
The history of Quebec City. Quebec City is one of the oldest European settlements in North America. While many of the major cities in Mexico date from the 16th century, among cities in the U.S. and Canada, only St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, Port Royal, Nova Scotia, St. Augustine, Florida, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Jamestown, Virginia and Tadoussac, Quebec were created earlier than Quebec City. However, Quebec City is the first to have been founded to receive a permanent settlement, and not as a commercial outpost. Therefore, it is considered the first European-built city in non-Spanish North America.
French explorer Jacques Cartier built a fort at the future site of Quebec City in 1535.
Jacques Cartier stayed for the winter before returning to France in the spring of 1536. He came back in 1541 to build a permanent settlement.
This present site of Quebec City was called Stadacona, after the name of a long-abandoned St. Lawrence Iroquoian settlement.
Although Stadacona is called the cradle of the Francophone population in North America, the Acadian settlement at Port Royal in present-day Nova Scotia antedates it.
This first settlement of Stadacona was abandoned less than 1 year after its foundation in the summer of 1542. This was mainly due to the natives' hostility and the harsh living conditions during winter. Some 66 years later, in 1608, Samuel de Champlain established the settlement at Stadacona as Quebec City. It is one of the oldest cities in North America.
Samuel de Champlain was a French explorer and diplomat. He is called the father of New France and served as its administrator for the rest of his life. This is Quebec City in 1700.
This is a 1-cent stamp commemorating 300 years of Quebec. The two pictured here are Jacques Cartier and Samuel de Champlain. Jacques Cartier was the first explorer of the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and he also built a fort at Stadacona, where Quebec City is now located. The name Canada has been in use since the earliest European settlement in Canada, with the name originating from a First Nations word Kanata, or Canada, for settlement, village, or land.
The French colony of Canada, New France, was set up along the St. Lawrence River and the northern shores of the Great Lakes.
Here is New France circa 1750.
This is a map of New France at its apogee, about 1750.
This shows New France about 1750 with the adjoining Spanish and British territories. France ceded New France, including Quebec City and Montreal, to Britain in 1763.
Later the area became two British colonies, Upper Canada and Lower Canada, until their union as the British Province of Canada in 1841.
Upon Confederation in 1867, the name Canada was officially adopted for the new Dominion, commonly referred to as the Dominion of Canada until after World War II.
Chapter 10. The French and Indian War is called the 7 Years' War in Canada. It was fought between the British and the French and their Indian allies over control of their colonial possessions in North America. It was part of the larger 7 Years' War between Britain and France.
The Battle of the Plains of Abraham, also known as the Battle of Quebec, was pivotal in the French and Indian War. The confrontation, which began on September 12, 1759, was fought between the British Army and Navy and the French Army on a plateau called the Plains of Abraham just outside the walls of Quebec City. The battle involved fewer than 10,000 troops between both sides, but proved to be a deciding moment in the conflict between France and Britain over the fate of New France, and influenced the later creation of Canada.
The battle was the culmination of a 3-month siege by the British and lasted less than an hour. British troops commanded by General James Wolfe successfully resisted the column advance of French troops and Canadian militia under Louis-Joseph Marquis de Montcalm.
The British troops under General James Wolfe defeated the French General Louis-Joseph de Montcalm and took Quebec City. Both generals were mortally wounded during the battle. Wolfe died on the field, and Montcalm passed away the following day in the wake of the war. France's remaining military force in Canada and the rest of North America came under increasing pressure from British forces. Nearly all of France's possessions in eastern North America would be ceded to Great Britain within 4 years.
General James Wolfe, 1727–1759, was a British Army officer known for his training reforms, but remembered chiefly for his victory over the French in Canada and establishing British rule there. Because of this, he has been regarded as a hero by many Canadians.
Louis-Joseph de Montcalm Gozon, Marquis de Saint-Véran, 1712–1759, was the commander of the French forces in North America during the 7 Years' War, the North American phase of which is called the French and Indian War in the United States. Montcalm is most remembered for his role in the fall of Quebec, and remains a controversial figure. This is a monument to Wolfe and Montcalm, the two commanding generals who died at the Battle of the Plains of Abraham, also known as the Battle of Quebec. This is a map of North America in 1681. Chapter 11, Quebec City.
At the end of French rule in 1763, the territory of present-day Quebec City was a world of contrasts. Forests, villages, fields and pastures surrounded the town of 8,000 inhabitants.
The town was distinguished by its monumental architecture, fortifications, muddy and filthy streets, affluent homes of masonry and shacks in the suburbs Street Jean and Street Roch. Despite its urbanity and status as capital, Quebec City remained a small colonial city with close ties to its rural surroundings. Nearby inhabitants traded their farm surpluses and firewood for imported goods from France at the two city markets. Following the British victory in Quebec, Major General Isaac Brock further fortified Quebec City by strengthening the walls and building an elevated artillery battery known as the Citadel of Quebec before the War of 1812. The citadel is located atop Cap d'Amen, adjoining the Plains of Abraham in Quebec City. The French name is used both in English and French.
This is a map showing the location of the citadel.
Martello towers we also built on elevated terrain beyond the city walls to provide further artillery support, turning the city into a fortress. In the end, the city was not attacked during the War of 1812, but continued to house a large British garrison until 1871.
The military still uses the citadel, and 3 of the Martello towers are maintained as museums and tourist attractions.
This citadel is part of the fortifications of Quebec City, the only city with city walls that still exist in North America.
This is the Citadel and the Plains of Abraham.
This is the Quebec Parliament building. Many other provincial government buildings and several large hotels are also nearby. In 1840, after the province of Canada was formed, the role of capital was shared between several cities. These were Kingston, Montreal, Toronto, and Ottawa. Quebec City served as the capital from 1852 to 1856 and again from 1859 to 1866.
Throughout its over 400 years of existence, Quebec City has served as a capital. From 1608 to 1627 and 1632 to 1763, it was the capital of French Canada and all of New France. From 1763 to 1791, it was the capital of the province of Quebec. and from 1791 to 1841, it was the capital of Lower Canada. From 1852 to 1856 and from 1859 to 1866, it was capital of the province of Canada. And from 1867 to today, it has been capital of Quebec.
By law, the government of Quebec considers the city of Quebec to be its national capital. However, some see the term national as being inaccurate since Quebec is not a country, and they believe the term national capital should be used only for Ottawa.
In 1867, Ottawa, which was chosen to be the permanent capital of the province of Canada, was selected to be the capital of the Dominion of Canada. The Quebec Conference on Canadian Confederation was held here. Chapter 12. The climate of Quebec City. Will it be hot, or will it be cold in Quebec City?
Here are the average high and low temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit throughout the year in Quebec City.
Here are the average high and low temperatures in degrees Celsius throughout the year in Quebec City.
Here is the average monthly precipitation in inches throughout the year in Quebec City.
Recommended videos, Quebec City. Recommended video, Top 10 Things to Do in Quebec City 2022 Canada Travel Guide. Recommended video, Quebec City, Quebec, Top Attractions.
Recommended video, A Brief History of Quebec.
Recommended video, The History of Quebec.
Recommended video, Quebec, Why is this Canadian city so French? Recommended video, Quebec Vacation Travel Guide, Expedia.
The Maple Leaf Forever.
Thanks for watching.